Hey everybody, welcome to Making Comics episode 1. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to use establishing shots in your comics, and we're going to be talking a little bit about layouts and a little bit about how exactly to place your word bubbles, on what pages word bubbles work best on. That sort of thing is what I wanted to talk about in this episode. And of course, I have my comic up on Indiegogo right now called Asyle. It's about a lady who's hunted by Dracula in an insane asylum. It's written by me, drawn by Vic King. We're fully funded and we've got 27 days left. Link is down below in the description. This would have been a fun live stream topic, but my channel got false flagged as well as my friend Mike, so neither of us could stream. And so you should also check out his comics. He's got 2 campaigns, Lone Star and Monster Hunt. The links to all of our books are down below in the description. But getting back to the main topic here. Recently on Ethan Van Sciver's channel, I tried to make a point about establishing shots in comics and how they weren't always necessary. You don't need an establishing shot for every single scene change. There's many ways to do a scene change, many ways to explain the reader, what's going on, where we are in the story. And I wanted to go through my book, Trixie, Kane, Blood Reaper here for you guys. And if you haven't read it yet, then this is going to be full of spoilers because I think we're going to show every page or at least most of them. So just so you know, we're going to be going through this if you haven't read it yet. And if you have, then good news, because Book 2 is coming. We've got 5 pages in the cover done, but maybe we'll look through that a little bit more later. I'm going to stop rambling here. We're going to get into it. So Trixie Kane, as far as Trixie Kane, if I have one complaint about this book, it's just that the first splash page is just so undynamic. But I think when you open up your book, it's absolutely fine to have a sort of establishing shot, setting the scene. But as you go on through your book, you don't really need to do that so often. I like to jump right into the action with each scene, and one reason why I like to do this is for something Alfred Hitchcock said, where he said he never uses an establishing shot to establish. It's better used as something that sets the tone for the scene, and it's better if it comes in the middle of the scene or the end of the scene, honestly. Here we've got the first 3 pages starts with this sequence of Trixie killing a vampire, and then we go from page 3 here to page 4, and we've cut right into this bunker here, her lair where she lives with her uncle. And the thing about this is, you didn't need an establishing shot to understand this. So many people think, well, if I don't have my establishing shot, how are they going to understand? You didn't need it to establish this. Something needs to be happening or it's a waste of space, especially in a comic book. I write novels too, which are also in the description if you want to buy them. But when I do that, I have all the space in the world because it could be as long as I see fit. A novel could go on for however long I need it to. In a comic where, you've only got a certain amount of pages and a certain amount of stuff that could happen on each page, I could fit the whole plot of a novel into a 1-page short story if I really wanted to. But with Trixie, this book is 60 pages. I couldn't fit all that into 1 page. So it's a very different medium, and the way you put the actions onto the page, it really matters. And so for this, we jump right into something happening. And so we go from here, from saying that, she got a letter from her dad, and then it cuts here to a flashback. And again, we sort of understand it's a flashback. We don't need the whole long ago with the establishing shot of her house. And when we go through here, which is my favorite probably sequence in the book, is this whole thing from this page to this one right here. It is intense. Oh boy, this is my favorite page. This one might be my favorite page. But anyways, so then we go here to the sequence, after the flashback of her ripping up the letter and stuff. And then on this page, we have the establishing shot last, where she says, "I'm not careless, I won't be like him." And then her uncle says, "You might as well try and stop the wind from blowing." And the establishing shot comes last. Now, if I had put that, way back here at the beginning, it would have been too crammed. It wouldn't have made much sense if we saw the outside of this place first versus when we come back here and we see it last. And from that establishing shot, it's very easy to cut to our next scene, to where we go here, which this is Ben Henderson right here. He paid to be in the book, and we've got Cecil in the background. But from here, I mean, we go right into the action. We didn't need an establishing shot of the town and then cut into the action. If you've got a panel in a comic book, something needs to be happening. It needs to serve a purpose. And again, establishing shots at the front of a scene are fine. I've done it myself, but I prefer to use it at later times to, set the tone, because it's more effective later on in a scene. And that's a really awesome splash page there. And see here, this is the thing about like a fight scene like this is the time where people want to put like a lot of dialogue, but this is the time when you should have the least dialogue, because it's a fight. And especially when you see this happening, each of these panels is like just a second. So on a page like this, the reader just wants to pop right through it. And then here, oh boy, there's not a ton for me to say on this one as far as what we're talking about with like, using your establishing shots and stuff. But I just wanted to take a second just to appreciate this 2-page layout here. This 2-page layout was actually supposed to be a lot longer. There was supposed to be a lot more panels that I had in the script. But then Sean he just went through and he's like, no, let's just hit on this beat, this beat, this beat, this beat. And it was just perfect the way he laid it out. But all that to say, let's skip to right here. So she's knocked out and this werewolf sees the silver and then runs away. And then from there, we just cut to here, to her in bed. You see, and we have the caption, "the next morning." That sums it up. We didn't need the establishing shot of the bunker. We didn't need like anything like that. It just flows scene to scene to scene. And if you look through the book so far, I mean, we're almost halfway through. There hasn't been a total, establishing shot. We just use that, later on to set effect. I think the best way to, cut from scene to scene is just to do that. Just get right into the next scene. You add it the next morning. People will understand there's, a time skip. Another thing, too, is the silhouette shot. Like we have the silhouette shot right here in the middle of this page. Silhouette shots are your best friend when you want to cut to a next scene. Do a silhouette shot, cut to the next scene. Nobody's going to notice and nobody's going to be confused. And, here we have her uncle just telling her, what all happened. And then we get this montage page here of some dead bodies. And as you can see here, like these sort of establishing shots, seeing the scenery, it's much more effective once you have an idea of what's going on. If I started with this, if I had this page first, not counting those first 2 panels, if I just had the scenery first, you'd be like, what's going on? But because we've got something actually established here with what's going on with the whole backstory, it flows a lot more than if you start with the establishing shot. So let's continue here. Okay, this is another flashback. Let's see. Well, we could touch on this one. See, this one's a bit more of an establishing shot here, like a more traditional one, because we've actually, you can actually see the trees and the scenery and stuff, and it's starting the scene. Not a ton happens on this page, really. She's just walking, then runs. But it was a good way to transition to this scene right here, because she runs and then runs right into the action. That's the thing. This is a time skip, a scene skip. It doesn't exactly feel like it, because you're going from this to right into the action where we should be. That's the thing, is people, have this weird idea of, no, you always need the first establishing shot right here. You really don't. We have an establishing shot right here to set the scene, because we're cutting from this flashback here over to, we're coming back to modern day, present day where we are right now. So cutting away from this flashback, sure, it's fine to have an establishing shot here, since we're also not just cutting away from the flashback, but sort of cutting away from where we were the first time, with going over, they're talking, and then we get a little bit of backstory of what's going on in this town, of all the vampire attacks. So, since we're cutting to a different scene from that as well, once we get away from this flashback, then it's absolutely fine to have this first panel here be the establishing shot. But see, when she comes from here, because this bridge is a totally different location from where this vampire is just murdering people. Look how brutal it is. So, that's the thing, is like, you've only got so much space on a page and so many pages in a book that we can't always waste time. And nobody's ever told me like, oh, hey, I was confused reading Trixie because you never had many establishing shots. No, there's just different techniques you use. I think the establishing shot takes me out of it more often than not, because whenever I see an establishing shot, I think, okay, this is a break in the story, I could put it down now or something. But whenever the story just flows, you're just so involved in it, you're just so in the middle of it, you're like, oh my goodness, let me just keep reading. It's sort of a psychological thing, I think. But anyway, let's go through. We've got this fight here. More of the fight, really long fight. I had a lot of fun writing this. I knew Sean was going to do a really awesome job. And again, whenever you got a fight scene like this, it's typically better not to have a lot of dialogue, which we'll go back through this and focus a little more on dialogue. I first wanted to get the establishing shot part out the way before we go back and talk a little bit more about like dialogue and where to place it. But let's get through this fight here. And oh boy, that was a really long fight. And well, let's see here. Now here's a good example of an establishing shot, because right now when we're done with this fight and the bat flies away, this is a great transition to then go to this moon right here. So we've got the bat here flying past the moon, and we cut to pretty much a prehistoric moon. So this is from like 100 years ago. And so this is the best transition, because when you go from this to this, people are just flowing along with it. We haven't even really taken them to a different location. We've just been looking at the moon, and then when they see these trees, they're in the familiar Ravenhill area, the Ravenhill trees. It just flows. It just flows. You see, it really depends how you use these establishing shots to make the story flow. So people don't even realize it at first that, if there's a break in the story, they could set it down. Now they don't, totally understand that. When they're reading, it'll just flow right through. So now we've come here to this flashback with some backstory from like 100 years ago. And then we come back here and see we just get right into the action, right into what's going on in Trixie's life. And then she finally decides to read the letter. And I mean, this is technically sort of an establishing shot right here in the middle of the page, but this is the best way to transition to that, is with this dialogue, reading the letter. You don't need, like, how do I want to put it really? A lot of people, when they write these and they get to the letter, they usually have the letter be the last thing on the page, and then the first thing on the next page would start what you just saw in the middle of our page. Sorry if I hope I made myself clear. You see how she's grabbing the letter, then reads it, and then the flashback starts on the same page. A lot of writers will have the flashback start on the next page. So the last panel for most people you might see on a page like this would be the Dear Trixie panel. But we start it here in the middle of the page, so that way it just flows. And then we've got the backstory of what her dad did that was so bad, with bringing her mother back to life, and then she was conceived shortly after that, and he made the deal with this demon. And then we could see where he's writing her from, and then we just cut right to the action. Now this is an establishing shot, but at least something's happening in it. See, I think as far as like traditional establishing shots, we've probably had 2 in the whole book so far. But the whole point of these is that like action should be happening. So we've got the car moving at the speed of light, going through here, and then we're on the inside. But if we had just cut right to the inside, it still would have made sense. But in a scene like this, I think we needed just a little bit more context, and so I put the car first and I put the car last. But typically, I think when you put the establishing shot last or in the middle of a scene, it gives it a whole new meaning. Because when you just put in an establishing shot, that's just boring. What is it? It's just, the area, that's the least interesting thing. Like, in half of this book, I could have done establishing shot of trees, but that would have been so boring, so repetitive. There's a language with comics and a way you have to flow from page to page, scene to scene, and the establishing shot sort of might take you out of it sometimes, and it might be a little, wonky of a way, a little clunky of a way to write. And so here we go with another flashback that, begins to happen, early in the page. So we've got her here overlooking this, and then the flashback starts because this castle place was actually it was a museum, and it closed down is what's happening in the story. And now we've got this flashback here. And pages like these are really the pages where, like, you take it slow, not a lot of stuff's happening. That's when you could, go ahead with the dialogue balloons. I think in this book's about 60 pages of story, and 23 of them don't even have words. You got to know when to use words, and there's certain pages you could use them on too. Certain pages where you probably shouldn't. And on a page like this, where it's a flashback, she's a kid walking through a museum. Then you could, talk about like, oh, what's that treasure chest? What's, this or that? She's asking questions, and we could establish a little bit more of the character development. And then from there, we jump right back here, right back into the action. And, I really dig this part. And now we're getting into like the heavy, like spoiler territory where like the bulk of the important scenes in this book happen. But, we'll continue anyways. But that's a brutal shot right there. That really is brutal. I love this. Like, Sean did a fantastic job at just translating everything I had in mind into the page with this. Should we keep going, or should I save this? I'm sure most of you have read this. We'll keep going with the spoilers. Now, this was my favorite transition right here when her uncle turns into the werewolf, the one that helped her earlier, that she didn't know he was a werewolf. And that's why he collects silver coins. That's why, throughout the book, you'll see him with coins because it stopped him from turning into a werewolf. And I just love this shot just right here. Just is really iconic. That's how I said in the script. I was like, Sean, iconic shot of the werewolf jump. And, he nailed it. But we'll keep going. I don't think there are any more establishing shot examples in the last few pages, but we'll just go through them real quick because there's not many of them left. Let's see here. Just awesome transitions, and let's see, he gets dressed back up. And here's the ending with her dad with the big reveal. Let me cut through here, and let's see. Okay, and so that brings us to the end of the book. And so you guys have really seen how we've used the establishing shot in this thing, and when it was important to use it and when it wasn't important to use it, and how you could, do different types of transitions. There are a ton of different ways to do transitions in a comic, and I just think, like, as far as the traditional establishing shot, I just think it's not very effective. I don't think it's good at setting the mood. I think the mood is better set after we learn things. For example, I wrote a book called the Christmas Morning Massacre. It's not out yet. It's a book that'll be on Amazon hopefully in the next few months. But the Christmas Morning Massacre, just like it sounds, it's wintertime. People are snowed into a mansion, and there's a killer in there with them. And basically, if that were to be a comic, I think a lot of people would start with the establishing shot of the house with snow all around it. And that's just a little bit boring. I think the better way to start something like that, and again, it's a book, not a comic, but if I did it as a comic, personally for me, I think the best way to start it would have been with maybe either a death sequence, murder sequence, or maybe you have somebody being stalked in the house, and then we could pull back, and then we could see, oh no, they're snowed in. Because when we're inside the house and we see certain things, we see a Christmas tree, we see decorations, we see what they're wearing, we see them drinking, hot chocolate from like a Christmas cup, then we sort of understand, this is the season, this is what's going on. We understand that they're being stalked by somebody. Then we pull out for dramatic effect, and then we see the snow around the house. And I just think, like, when it starts with the snow around the house, it's just not that good of an effect, because now you've sort of like, well, how do I want to put it? When let's say it was a comic and we're looking at this person getting stalked, then we're like, okay, maybe they could fight it, maybe there could be a way out. But then once we pull back and reveal that there's snow everywhere, then we get even more scared later on into the movie. You don't want to do all your scares early on. You don't want to give everything away early on. So then when we cut out and we see, oh no, there's like 3 feet of snow outside this door, now you're on the edge of your seat, you're even more into it. Granted, it would have some sort of effect if you did that establishing shot first, but I think it's better if you save it for last, save it for the end of a scene, the middle of a scene. It just adds more effect. It's just the establishing shot, traditionally how people use it, I think is just a little too clunky. And, as far as going through and like looking at, dialogue on these pages, I just, I think it depends on your panel count. I know there's no words on the splash page, but on a splash page, that's typically when people linger. People love to linger on splash pages. People love to look at the splash page and they take in the art. And since they're already there, if you have, 10 word bubbles, they're not going to totally mind going through them all. And I'm not saying you need 10 word bubbles, but I'm just saying, for example, if there was a place to dump a lot of information, it might typically be best on a splash page. There's an art to it. And, like a page like this, like people, it's 3, but technically 2 panels, because we've got, this one's an overlapping panel. But, when it's something like this, when it's two or 3 panels, it's a much different effect than the splash page, because the splash page, people want to stay on it, they want to linger on it, they take in the art. But when you get to a 2-panel page, people just want to look at the first one, the second one, and they want to get out of there. So when it's something like this, the fewer bubbles, the better. This would not be the time to put in 10 word bubbles, because a page like this, people just want to get right out of there. And let me see. I'm not a wordy person, so, and like I said earlier, 23 of the pages out of 60, they don't have words, and the ones that do, look at this, they've got 4 word bubbles, which my rule is 10 or fewer word bubbles a page. I have almost never ever gone past 10 word bubbles on a page, but let's see. But then, when you get like an interaction like this, now it's fine to, include some more word bubbles, because, people are just, standing there talking, not much is going on. But there's just certain ways that you want to do this. Like in a chase scene, this dude says, "Oh God, someone please," and then, just stop. And so it's a lot, a lot quicker. And so you just have these word bubbles where it's like 2 words, 1 word, you get through there quick. Now's not the time to say like my palms are sweating, or, I'm so frightened, and you have like the overlapping, a bunch of dialogue boxes. Oh, and that's just a wicked splash page. I just love that so much. Love it so much. But again, like fight scenes like this, like it's typically better not to have a lot of words. I think somebody that reviewed this book one time, who was it that reviewed it? I'm trying to remember who reviewed it. Somebody reviewed Trixie one time and said, like, "I'm so glad the fight scenes don't have a lot of words. Typically people want to be like, all right, we're fighting, now let me tell you about the Declaration of Independence." Who said that? Somebody said that. I'm trying to remember who it was that reviewed it. It was a great video. Might have been Nathan Brennan Masterson, I think is his name. But yeah, I think he reviewed it, and he was like, "Oh boy, I'm glad the fight scenes don't have a lot of talking." And like, here's a good example. Like when you have like more panels, like, and people are gonna be here a little bit longer, you might get away with, having more word balloons. But of course, because it's me, it's like morning sunshine, 2 words. And I guess there's caption 2 right here. The next morning, 3 words. Grown. Where are you going? You can't keep doing this to yourself. And then please, and so it's like real quick, real quick dialogue. And I just think that there's like when you get here, like when you got like 6 panels and we're going through and showing, the aftermath of a lot of these attacks that have been going on. So, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get 5 word bubbles, now you could put a few more on, although they're still pretty short, word boxes. Like I don't, typically use too many words, because I like a lot of the things in my books to be expressed through what's happening. I feel a lot of the times word bubbles are redundant, and that's just something I learned from making that same mistake, is that a lot of the time when you use word bubbles, it's redundant. And in a comic, sometimes the author just likes to hear himself or herself speak, and so they might add on a bunch of word bubbles, which I've made that same mistake. But now is not the time to have like the overlapping boxes of her thoughts being like, "Oh, the pain. Oh my goodness, I'm about to die. I need, oh my goodness, and I need help. I might not make it out." Like, this is not the time, because we could see that. Look, the teeth are starting to go into her throat. you know, she's reaching for the knife, you know, is she gonna get it, is she not? And of course she does, but like now is not the time. Like you see how much she's fighting, how much pain she's in. Now is not the time for a dialogue box to tell us that. You know, if she were just walking down the street and her thoughts could be on something else, then that's the time to, you know, if her thoughts are anything other than, hey, I'm walking down the street. You know, if she's walking down the street and then, you know, you have a dialogue box saying, like, I'm so nervous about this or that, or I can't wait for this or that, you know, that's the time to have a dialogue box and show us her thoughts. But in a scene like this, too many times they have the dialogue boxes of, oh no, I'm frightened for my life. Well, we could see that. I'm pretty sure you guys could understand that on the last panel here. She is fighting for her life. Look how much it took out of her, and it's all silent, all silent. And even after he's dead, she's just still stabbing away. And then when she walks away, then we could, you know, catch up with her thoughts. I'm almost worried about my own blood loss, but I don't care. I can't care not about this or anything. You have baggage. When you care, you have to worry. And that means they'll know you have a weakness, that you have something to lose. And now that she walks away, we could, you know, feel some of her thoughts. We could understand some of it. But during the fight, typically, I mean, or during, you know, some other scenes, not just fights, we could understand what's going on, and we don't always need those word bubbles. Same here. We don't need, you know, the, you know, who is this, Abraham Lincoln? It looks just like Abraham Lincoln. But, you know, we don't need, like, all the word bubbles back and forth between these two. We understand what's happening. You know, they're going for a ride. And then here, you know, she freaks out. And then, you know, here's where we have some dialogue, you know, talking about the ancient myths and stuff and the legends and what happened. And, you know, but like here, you know, if her mind was on other things, which it wasn't, I knew it wasn't. I knew here she was just focusing on exercising, on working out, you know. But if she was thinking about something else other than, you know, what she's doing here, then it would have been a good time to put in some dialogue balloons. But then here she walks in and she finally decides to read what her father wrote for her. And, you know, now's the time to get us caught up on things, because now it's, you know, more of a montage now. And with montages, that's a good time too to have the dialogue balloons, because while the montage does tell the whole story, I think it's strengthened by the words that we have on this montage. And I think most montages might be good with some narration. It also helps move things along. You know, you get through things quicker. Like I said, you only got a certain amount of real estate. So when you want to get some point across, maybe give a little bit more backstory, talk about certain things, the montage is one of the best places to include the dialogue balloons. But then we go through that and we explain some of her backstory, why she's so twisted, which is because, you know, her mother was brought back from the dead. That's when she was conceived, was sometime after that. So that sort of messed up Trixie. She was, you know, born a little differently, a little strangely. And so, you know, we've got more of like the letter she's reading, you know, where she pictures her dad is. And then, you know, on a high-speed chase like this, you know, that's also a good time to have the balloons, because of course, you know, if the book had no balloons, it would all make sense. But the balloons, the point of the balloons is to strengthen the story, not to tell the story. That's a mistake a lot of people make, is they think they need the balloons to tell the story. Every comic book ever that's worth reading would make all the sense it does without the balloons. So in a case like this, you know, I thought the balloons made it better when she says, eyes on the road, should I be driving? And you put that stupid coin down. And of course, later that makes more sense, because you find out he's a werewolf. He needs it so he doesn't turn. You know, that's the only thing stopping him. And he says, I'm fine, little lady. And there's no putting her down. She helps me to think, you know. It's that sort of thing. You know, we have these flashbacks. You know, the words here are supposed to strengthen it, to tell us a little bit more about her character, more of the backstory, her father's character, her family. Those sorts of things. And it's also explains, you know, it also serves another purpose. That scene also explains how she's familiar with this place, because it used to be a museum and it closed down, this castle here. And, you know, so she's a little familiar with it, with the layout of this place. You know, it's not alien to her, although, you know, there's been vampires that have moved in, you know, since then. You know, there's coffins and stuff, you know. So that's the point of it. Now here, like this transition, you know, it's supposed to look painful, you know, it's, you know, you see him coughing, he falls down, he's hurt, he looks up at the moon, and it's supposed to look painful. I'm not, if I needed the word boxes here to tell you, oh, I feel so much pain reverberating through my body, that sort of thing, I would not be doing my job properly of writing a comic script, because you guys need to see it on the page. The only way I would need word boxes here is if it would strengthen the scene, and it doesn't. I think Sean does a good enough job of showing you his pain. He falls down, and I just think he just does such a good job of translating what I put down to this page, that no word balloons I could put here would strengthen it at all. And let's see, like here, these fight scenes, just real quick, we didn't need, the dialogue boxes, fight scenes, like, they happen real quick. I know I said earlier, like a page with a lot of panels would be best, for putting some dialogue, and that would be, but once we're in a fight here, then we're in that like gray area where, like, really would it be, maybe a couple like dialogue boxes here would be fine, but for the most part, I think probably for the whole part, it's better without them. But like here you see, like, she just says, huh? Like that sort of clues us in, like she's starting to realize something going on here, and then her uncle turns back to normal. And I just think like or like a scene like this, where it, we've got a lot of panels, first of all, these smaller panels, but then when we've got a bigger panel like this, like a reveal, this is a good place to maybe add in some word balloons, although I didn't add a ton here once we got to the reveal. But a reveal like this, would be all right, because a lot of the art of him, takes up, of her dad, takes up most of the page. So I think here, it'd be cool, or not cool, fine, if you had some more dialogue boxes there. Then we've got a few here, not many, because of course, things are piecing together in her mind what the letter meant. It was all a lie. And we get a few pages in here, and this is where it amplifies it, because now, earlier when she's killing vampires, okay, she doesn't care. She doesn't have any emotions for them. They're monsters. But here, when it's her father, now we need these dialogue boxes, because you don't know what she's thinking in this case. The whole point of this book is she too far gone? Does she hate him too much for what he did to her mother, with she died because of him, because of that monster that followed him, that he made a deal with. It's all his fault, and she saw her mother die, and she grows up to hate him, but does she hate him so much that when the letter comes, will she save him? And so now we've gone through this roller coaster, and now when she's here stabbing him, you want to know what she's thinking, and that's why I brought in these word balloons. And I say right here, like, well, she says, as I tried to kill him, I almost cried. I almost felt something, because the point of this whole book is she feels really empty, doesn't really feel anything. And she says, I almost cried. I almost felt something. And then, we end here with a bit of a cliffhanger, because he, takes out, he takes out one of her eyes. You can see it right there. And she, he flies away, and she's just left here in pain, and, to be continued. And there's just certain places where you need dialogue, to bring out the emotions of a scene, and certain places where you don't need it. And if you and the artist are doing your job right, everything's going to mesh together. But I hope this was helpful for you guys to sort of understand my thought process on establishing shots, how I like to lay out my pages for my, or how I like to write my scripts for my artists to lay them out, what I would prefer in a page layout. And how I choose to incorporate dialogue, and the times where I don't incorporate dialogue, which are just as important, even more important than the times you do. I hope this gave you guys a better understanding of how I like to do my comics. And of course, like I said at the start of this, my book is sales on Indiegogo right now. We've got 27 days left. We're at $1,800 if you guys want to back us. My friend Mike, he's got Lone Star. This is the third book in the series, but you could get the other two on here. And also his book Monster Hunt, you guys could get. He's got 2 campaigns up. So the links to all of these books are going to be down in the description. Thank you all for watching, and we'll have another episode of this pretty soon, where I'm going to go through and talk about more things related to writing comics and putting together comics. And I hope you guys stick around. Peace.